Hey, what'd they say?
Oh, cool. Don't be going crazy.
I mean, yes, you get dessert. All right, I did it right that time. What is up, everybody? Super excited about tonight's stream. As you guys know, trying to prep for the Chad Daybell trial, which I thought was going to start next week, but apparently it's a much longer process than that. So it's probably like 2 to 3 weeks. But nonetheless, we're gonna get some background on this. And I initially, when I thought about this, I'm like, it would be great to have a prosecutor and a defense attorney to kind of break this down for us. And I reached out to Bob Mata and I reached out to Katie Bogenschutz, and I said, hey, could you guys do this? Bob was like, I'm on vacation. He wasn't sure, so that's why I set it up just with Katie. But then Bob is on vacation. He came through. He is here, so I'm very excited to go over this with both of them. Bob is on vacation, but he is here, folks, and Katie is here. You guys probably all know Bob Mata, but if you don't already, make sure you subscribe to his podcast, Defense Diaries. We were talking before we came on here. Him and his wife, amazing wife, Allie, they covered this, and I'm going to listen to it as we get closer because they had the audio in the Lori Vallow case was all dropped, and they listened to it, and they put out episodes on it, and I'm going to listen to it, and that's going to be a way that I'm going to get background. So make sure you are following Defense Diaries. Additionally, folks, I have Katie Bogenschutz, who I got some of the best feedback, other than probably Bob, that I've ever had with a guest, other than some people got a little mad at the two of us because we said we didn't want to see our neighbors, and they were like, well, we like to see our neighbors in Florida. I don't know. They were like, give me shit about it. But other than that, people love Katie Bogenschutz. And if you don't know Katie, give you a little background on Katie. She worked in the Broward State Attorney's Office following law school. Over the nearly 9 years she spent there, she handled and tried a litany of criminal charges. After 4 years prosecuting general crimes, DUIs through and including attempted murder, she was promoted to the Specialized Sex Crimes and Child Abuse Unit, where she stayed for over 4 years. The cases in this unit were often high profile, which we're talking about. So I'm glad we could talk about that, and covered in both local and national news. After that, she moved to Tallahassee. Katie was barred in both the middle and northern districts of Florida and joined the state's attorney's office for the Second Judicial Circuit. In the 3 years spent there, she was designated to prosecute approximately 1/4 of the sex crimes that occurred in Leon County. In addition to her caseload, Katie volunteered to teach continuing education classes to prosecutors around the state on the topics of domestic violence and sex crimes. To date, she has handled thousands of cases in multiple jurisdictions and tried over 130 jury trials to verdict. So, folks, without further ado, Katie and Bob, what is up, guys?
What is happening?
Good evening.
Hey, Katie, based on your CV there, I'm going to hire you. You're hired.
Oh, let's hope you don't need me.
Oh, girl, I need you. Come on. Always need good lawyers. Always need good lawyers. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. We got to talk a little bit.
Hey, Scout. What's that?
We still have to try our pineapple pizza together.
I know. Katie, if you don't, we are both. I have the palate of a 12-year-old, and Scout here. Are you 13 yet? Are you 12 now? How old are you?
I'm turning 12 this summer.
Turning 12. So we have the same palate. So we have to try things together. So we're going to try pizza with pineapple and ham together one day on stream and see if we like.
It's going to be pretty crazy.
We are definitely.
Oh, and there's like a Hawaiian take on this case too. There's a whole Hawaiian.
Oh,
set. Ooh.
Hello.
Good call. Good.
All right, go. Am's great. Go have fun.
Good to see you, Scout. Have fun.
Leave me to my work.
Wait, everybody's saying hi to me. Hi, guys.
All right. Bye. Love you. Have fun.
So
Stay out of trouble.
Definitely your kid.
Definitely my kid.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, especially, you know, Bob, you're on vacation, so thank you for doing this. And Katie, you just put you said 8 o'clock is good because the kid is asleep, so I'm sure you probably, and you were just in jail today, right? You were just visiting a client.
I was visiting the jail.
Visiting a client in jail. Let's clarify. So I'm sure, you know,
I can't say
come on.
like
big distinction there, Jay.
I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. So for both you guys to come on, I really appreciate it. So I wanted to go to you first, Katie. You know, Bob has covered this, like I said, with his wife, and he knows all the details, but you kind of knew the details, but you kind of dug, after I asked you, kind of like went, you know, dug into it. I'm curious what your impressions are when you went through like the documents and going over the case, what your thoughts are.
Well, first of all, the case is batshit. If your viewers have not gone through it, like, you cannot make this stuff up. And if somebody tried to, you would never be published, because it is this insane. You've got Latter-day Saints, you've got buried bodies, you've got undetermined causes of death, you've got all kinds of stuff. It's such a weird roller coaster ride. In fact, the first thing I said to you, Jay, was, oh wait, they're trying all those charges together. Because I was unaware of the fact that they had actually been murdered in such short succession, because if those of us who were home potentially watching a lot of the news during the beginning and part of the pandemic, it was all about, like, you know, whatever came into our living rooms was, where are the kids? Where are the kids? Where are the kids? And it was like during the beginning part of 2020. Well, they were already dead, like back in by October. And they didn't find them until, I think, the following summer.
Yeah, it was a little bit before they figured that out.
Yeah,
it
was months. It was months. They went
and to the extent that they couldn't do a cause of death on them.
Correct. Yeah, they had already gone to Hawaii
and returned and gone to jail.
Correct. Yeah, it was like that's that one interview with Lori, where she's such a sociopath, and like, and Katie, you were talking about just kind of like this trial. At least Lori's had like every element that you could ever want in a trial, just in terms of just so many things intertwined. And like, the thing that I'm curious about going into Chad's is that, and Jay, you saw some of it, you got a taste of it today when you're recovering that pretrial hearing. And I don't know, what was that? Was that his preliminary hearing? What was that?
It was like a preliminary probable cause hearing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, like, they spent days and days getting the jury acclimated to the religion aspect of this. Like, basically, Allison and I literally were calling Mormon churches because we didn't want to be idiots in terms of kind of like what the baseline of the Mormon religion is, and then understanding like how they had bastardized it, because they took a lot of the elements of the Mormon religion and, you know, obviously changed things. Like, clearly there's no, you know, light and darkness scale, and, you know, but there is the concept of the 100, you know, there were elements that they incorporated. And, you know, we had so many people messaging us during that, when we were covering that case, that were like, Mormons were like, hey, we'll give you a primer. You know, I like ordered Mormon for Dummies, like, no bullshit. Cause it was like that much a part of the trial. Like, as much as, you know, Creighton Waters incorporated the financial crimes portion in the beginning of Murdoch, which took up a huge amount of time, they did the same thing with like really the religious aspect of everything, just generally giving the people an understanding of what was going on with these people in their minds. And specifically Lori and Chad, you know, before getting to like any of the crimes being committed, you know, like a bulk of it was. So it was fascinating. It was a fascinating trial, man. So I'm excited about this trial, because I think if people didn't get to really follow that particular trial, you know, because it was only on audio, they're in for, if you're a trial observer, you're in for a treat, obviously, with the underlying horror what the case is about, which is, of course, the loss of those two beautiful young kids. But
yeah, and
there's a lot of death associated with these two beyond the kids too. So
yeah, it just happens to follow them everywhere. And I was talking to Lori Hellis last night, and she said this is not going to be the same thing with Archibald, the man who sounded like he was basically sleepwalking. This attorney is going to have a vigorous defense, she said, and they have witnesses, and I want to go over that in a little bit. But apparently they're going to be challenging the FBI cast court, how that works. So I want to get into that. But before we do, I'll start with you, Kate, and then go to Bob. I'm curious, like I said, I thought this was going to be this week. They're questioning the jurors, and then next week they're going forward. But in fact, this week the jurors come in that had a 23-page like questionnaire, and they have to come in, and then it's like 2 weeks after that where they start questioning the jurors. And I wanted to ask both of you, and Katie, you go first, and then Bob. This is a big, high-profile case, like we know, and both of you have handled those. What's it like when you have this long jury process? Like, how important is it, and what is it like in a high-profile case to have to pick a jury?
Well, in my experience, usually it's a winnowing down process. So you try to see, first of all, who might qualify for the panel, and that will knock off a significant number of them. And then you get through the facts of who definitely can't do this because of some kind of a hardship, and that narrows it down a little bit more. How long is the trial? Who's got a trip planned? Who's got surgery planned? Who's got kids at home? What are the statutory reasons to kick them off the jury or for them to request exemption from the panel? And I believe that Ms. Hellis said last night 70 was the limit for Idaho. So we're kicking off people that are over 70. And, one of the reasons that you can be kicked off a jury or you could request to be kicked off a jury in Florida is either being pregnant or having a baby at home that is under a certain age, being a sole caregiver for this child or for an elderly person. So a lot of that you have to talk through before you even get to the facts. And then from that point, you actually have a panel full of people that you can actually question. And then you also want to start with who's crazy. And my boss always put it, or one of my old bosses, and it's rung in my ears ever since then, never leave a banana on the panel, because you never know what they're going to do. And it's always like, is there somebody in here that smells like a sovereign citizen to me? Like, who's just going to blow, and Bob's laughing, but these are people who Google it, people that like feel like, no, I will not submit to your laws. I will not follow your laws. I am not here for, I don't know why they're responding to jury duty in the first place if they're sovereign citizens.
Right.
Who has that kind of an odor of crazy. Maybe you want to take them separately. So that they don't poison the panel.
Let me ask you, Katie. So, and it's a great question that lawyers always get asked. In terms of picking a jury for this case, who's your perfect juror?
Mainstream Mormon female with 5 kids at home who maybe homeschools them. I don't know. Is like way too involved with them.
So that, right, as a prosecutor, is your
so
what about?
Yes,
what about,
if I'm okay. Yes.
So that's prosecutor.
Right, and what about you, Bob, as a defense attorney? What's your perfect juror?
I think for me, it's probably a 40 to 50-year-old male who has been in a relationship wherein the woman really was the Svengoolie. She was the one who, like, he was enraptured with her. She had him like hook, line, and sinker, because like that was the debate between Allison and I during that entire, while we were covering that trial. I was very much that Lori was the mastermind, that she had been searching for a guy like Chad, somebody who had a voice, who had similar thoughts in terms of the religion. And there goes my wife driving, looking for the building. She just drove by in an area she's not supposed to be driving by. So no, go. So, but like the thing with those two was that I was very much of the mindset that Lori was running the show, that Chad, once she got him in her evil clutches, that he did whatever she said. I had her as the puppet master, which is, that's essentially what we end up calling it. And Allie, I think by the end of it, I had turned her to like, she's like, yeah, you're right. Lori was the mastermind. Like, cause Chad's a fucking idiot. Pardon my French.
He's so dumb.
He's so fucking, like, I'm talking box of rocks. Like, the people's favorite thing that I did in that is like when he's driving by and they finally are searching his property and he's on a phone call with Lori and he was tapped. So he didn't know. And he's like, they're searching.
And by the way, that whole time they have a warrant. They go up to him and he's just staring at where the bodies are. He's looking over his shoulder and they're like, wait, he's staring, like they're watching him, and he keeps looking in the yard at the place. Like, he's just really, really dumb. And I thought Lori, the good Lori put it a good way last time when I talked to her. She said, Chad was kind of the ideas guy with, like, talking about doomsday, but Lori was the executor. She was the one that put the plans in action, and like kind of, I agree, like she kind of like was like, all right, we need to get this done. So let me take this nonsense that Chad's talking about with the light and the dark, and let's put it into, execute it into a plan. But let me ask you this, both you guys.
Dude, he was the clay. Trust me. Like he wrote these books, and they were all ridiculously absurd, but he had some people that followed him, and like Lori immediately recognized this is exactly what she needed. I'm just telling you, she was a woman with a plan. Like, I mean, she went through multiple husbands, man. And, it was like, she just couldn't find the right one to get to where she needed to be, which was ultimately where she ended up, before it all fell apart, but she was very much exactly where she had been trying to position herself for years, and Chad was the guy. It was like, he was the man behind the woman. She wasn't the woman behind the man. You know what I mean?
What do you think her goal was in all this? That was my question.
I think her goal was ultimately to be seen as a prophet. Like, I think that was where she was heading. I think, and she got greedy, when she ended up like just wanting to focus exclusively on what she felt like she was put on earth to do. Because like, she believes that shit. Like there is no part of me that does not believe that will, like, I don't think that she's a fraud in the sense that I think she actually buys the shit that she's trying to sell. Like, well, I honestly do.
She really cemented that in her speech at her sentencing.
Yeah.
She really cemented that, like, and it's like you said, Bob, she does not give a fuck. Whatever is happening right now means nothing to her. It's of no consequence because she feels like it doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters. She knows what's going to happen. She's one of the 144,000 or whatever. She is a prophet. Like, but anyway, I want to go back to the fact. I want to ask you, Katie, and both you guys, actually, because like I said, you both handle high profile cases. Do you have to? And Katie, you were talking about when you came on how like you were watching and all the news was about where are the kids. Do you have to be resigned at some point in this area that you're going to have jurors that have seen coverage of this case, or do you think it's possible to get jurors that are like completely have no idea of what has gone on with the case?
So it's possible that you might get some jurors that are maybe transplants to the area. And granted, there are a lot of people who have moved around since the beginning of the pandemic and maybe were not living there at the time. But what rock would you have to be living under, and what part, how divorced would you have to be from all technology in order to not have seen this? In fact, if you managed to get somebody that was a totally blank slate, I'd have a lot of questions for them on both sides. That, like, basically, are you the banana?
Right.
Are you the banana that I'm looking for?
Right. Yeah. And Bob, like you had this problem with Garcia, right? Wasn't there an issue with tainting the jury pool and like worried about people knowing?
I don't want to upset our prosecutor friend here, but yeah, I mean, they were leaking shit out to the press that no one could have known other than the state and or law enforcement in terms of, I mean, I would be in a deposition, deposing one of their experts, and I'd get a call from the media who'd be like, hey man, do you have any comments about this motion for sanctions against Allison they just filed? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? What motion for sanctions? And then 10 minutes after that call, the prosecutor's little, kind of lackey comes up to me. He's like, "Oh, hey man, I just wanted to let you know we filed this motion." I'm like, "Yeah, the press called me about it, dude." And like we were in a depth with them, but it was like just like the things that sometimes happen in big cases is that, what people don't kind of understand is you can't unring some bells. So when they attack Allison publicly saying that she was trying to intimidate a material witness and harass a material witness which she was not doing in any way, shape, or form. And thankfully we had our PI who went to go interview this witness, recorded it all. And, but once that got out to the press, it was out there and it had already settled into the, prospective jurors' minds. Same with like the dog sniff search, which was known to be outlawed by a 100-year-old case in Omaha, yet they leak it to the press that they had taken a dog out to Anthony Garcia's, where no one was killed, mind you, 8 years after the fact, and that a dog hit on the young boy's scent on the pavement from the car. So once that gets out there, it's like it doesn't matter how much pounding on the table and yelling and screaming we do. It doesn't matter, because once the press gets a hold of it, it's out there and the damage is done, So it's like, that's always the battle with the defense side of it. And that's like where I'm at on the Delphi shit, like why I'm such a loud voice on that case, because they're doing the same thing. But in this case, unlike most cases, the defense got their narrative out. And Katie will attest, she was never in any of these crimes that were committed. Neither were the cops, unless they observed it firsthand. They're going based on the evidence, and they're coming up with a theory on what happened. If it's not completely evident, if you're having to build a case and say, okay, I think this is what went down, it's a theory, and that's all it is. And we have the same thing. So it's like, but typically it's the state's theory that gets sent out to the public and stewed on for 2 and 3 years without any kind of rebuttal by the defense. And Delphi was very much not like that, because they put out that Frank's memo where they put out their entire theory of the case. And I'm like, well, for me, that just evens the scales of justice. So now you got 2 theories out there for the public to stew on while this thing's pending. And, but it's like we're so accustomed to just having the state's narrative being the only one out there. As a defense bar guy, it's always kind of gotten on my nerves, and I'm like, oh, well,
But you do have to be very careful about that sometimes. I mean, I had one where like a younger version of me would have never had the discipline to hold back what I held back for closing on the defense side. Like a younger version of me would have jumped up and said, I'm the smartest person in the room in opening, maybe even in jury selection. And I saved it for closing when they had closed their evidence and put it up there. And I was like, 15 years of doing this, even if I knew everything I knew the first day, never would have had the discipline to do that. And sometimes you have to hold that back. And now it's granted that one wasn't high profile, but if you have a theory of the case that you can tie together in closing like that, and I hope I'm making some kind of sense here, because I'm trying
You're
not
making
to.
Total sense.
Can I ask you guys? I got a question for you guys. So this is, you guys have both handled big cases. I'm curious, Katie, and then Bob. Katie, what are some challenges when you have an 8-week long? This could be like 8 weeks, probably, maybe, I don't know. So it's a long trial, and you have multiple agencies, like the FBI, like different states. Like, what are the challenges going forward? Getting your witnesses together. Like, what are you, when you're preparing for this, which I'm sure, they're doing, major preparations now, well, probably already done, but they're picking a jury. But like, what are the challenges when you have such a big case that's going to last so long? How is that, Kate? Like, what is that like, Katie?
There's so many moving parts, and you usually have some kind of witness coordinator who's trying to put the puzzle together for you and make sure people show up at the right time in the right place. And I used to have a rule that, like, when I was an assistant state attorney, I would always have 3 witnesses outside the courtroom, no matter what. And I didn't care what the cops hated me. I didn't care who hated me for it, because you never know. And you need to always, if you're the state or the government, you need to always be ready to go, always be ready with your evidence. and always be ready to put on the next thing in case something weird happens. A lot of my cases were, and a lot of my cases I tried on the fly because they were cases, crimes against children. So what I would generally do, unless I had a really good reason not to, was put the kid on the stand first and then use the rest of the witnesses to clean up whatever the hell just happened up there. Because, you know, you can develop a great rapport with a 7-year-old, but you put a 7-year-old on the stand and it's hurting cats. So,
now, Katie, let me ask you, do you play nice or like, so I always try to explain to people, you know, the state has no obligation in a case that has, you know, anywhere from 50 to 70 witnesses that have been disclosed. So, you know, we don't know how many they're going to call. But as a general proposition, when you were trying cases from the state side, would you play nice with the defense and let them know this is who we have coming? You know, this is who we're calling today.
I'm calling them in, but here's who's up tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. See, like that was real touch and go for us. And like Garcia, they did not do that, you know, and we had a massive witness list and they would not tell us who they were calling the next day, which left us guessing, educated guessing. Well, they had no obligation to do it. And it was a heated trial. It was a death penalty case. And we were both fighting very, very hard. You know, it was like, I was nose to nose with that prosecuting attorney more than once behind closed doors, of course. But, you know, it was like both sides were very passionate about it. You know, like I have a job to do as far as, Pam Coggin coming in with
Pam,
a $50 hollow,
so
bro.
much, Pam. Holy crap.
She's the best. You know whose mom? I told you this already. So,
well, Bob, you know, one thing I want to say, and you've talked about this before, as like, when we're talking about state versus defense, you know, and we talked about this like with murder, like the state can have like a whole team, whereas you as a defense, if you're handling a defense and you don't like this guy who's, I'm blanking on his name, the defense attorney for Chad, he's kind of by himself. He like
Pryor, John, I think it's John
Pryor. Yes, John Pryor. Thank you.
Yep.
He
There's
kind of
something
just has
very,
to, like,
you know, medieval about that.
He so I mean, and you can do this, you can talk about this too, Kate, but like now that you're not, you know, when you're not for the state, but like he just has to stop everything he's doing, any other cases he has, you know, whether he has like a paralegal or someone helping him or co-counsel, but like as opposed to the state who has a team, right? Like it's a much different experience, and it's like for the defense, especially if it's like a smaller firm and it's just John Pryor, that's got to be quite a challenge.
Bob and Allison, like against the entire Douglas County prosecutor's office. It's like, I call it the crushing power of the state. They have the resources, they have the manpower. It's like, it really is an uphill battle for defense counsel because we just don't have the resources available to them. Like typically we don't have wealthy clients. So whereas the state gets a budget in terms of saying, okay, these are the experts we need, they're not having to go in with an indigent client in tow on bended knee, begging the judge for county funds to hire experts. And it's, you know, and we have a right to put on, in order to get a fair trial, if the state's got X amount of witnesses, we should be able to have witnesses to counter them. And it's tough. It's tough to squeeze that money out because you'll see like the public, oh, like the taxpayers are paying for this scumbag. I'm like, look, man, it's the Constitution. Like number one, everybody, you know, so it's like, and I like, we always had to deal with that, you know, because the majority of our clients are indigent, you know, wealthy people typically aren't the ones committing crimes.
Did you guys hear that Chad basically had to sign over? He's indigent now apparently, and he signed over his house to John Pryor, like the equity in his house. So like apparently, you know, Chad is out of the money. He got, Lori was talking about last night, he got something like $440,000 from the life insurance for Tammy, and then he has a certain amount, but basically it's all gone at this point. So
for sure,
that's going to be
and he at least had assets, you know. I mean, it's like with Garcia.
Well, there's also the Slayer statute too, so there may have been some clawback for some of those assets, like the life insurance.
For sure. Like,
and to tell everybody else who's watching, the Slayer statute is you can't kill somebody and then benefit from their death. And it's one of our favorite things in law school because we're like, Slayer.
I was just gonna say, so it has nothing to do with the band.
Yeah, but it's
Well,
the
it kind of does. It kind of
you can't
does.
benefit from the life insurance. You can't use whatever $3.5 million you got from killing your husband in order to hire the dream team.
Yeah, you can't get like it's ill-gotten gains. You can't fucking do that shit. But it's like he hadn't been prosecuted for it yet, you know. So it's like
He started spending it too.
I'm sure he was, you know.
So-
it's like it's this is going to be a good one, this trial.
Well, and I want to kind of get into different from like we were talking about, where Lori Vallow just didn't give a shit. Basically, it seemed like she just like didn't tell her. Apparently, she didn't want to throw anyone under the bus. She just wanted to just basically, it seems like, get it over, from what the good Lori was saying. But it's going to be much different now. I'm curious. How do you think this? Basically, they're just going to start throwing Alex under the bus. They're going to right. I mean, they're going to start throwing Lori under the bus. Like that, if you're the defense attorney, that's what you're going to do, right? Like, there's no, like, this is a conspiracy case. They're like, you're just going to be just. Go ahead.
If I am John Pryor, and I don't know if he's filed, given notice of any affirmative defenses, but that thing that we were talking about, I can't remember if it was off air, about that thing that they carved out. Like, they do not have the insanity defense in Idaho. They do have this exception where you can basically use a mental defect defense to attack the mens rea of a statute, meaning, and I think I was off air when I was talking about this. And so basically what you can do in Idaho is you can say, okay, well, look, the homicide statute, one of the requirements is that you have to end the life of a human being. And if you can put on an expert to say, look, I've done X amount of hours of evaluating this person, and this person did not think that they were killing two human beings when they killed the kids. He, in fact, thought he was getting these demons or dark spirits out of the vessel, and that just so happened to leave the vessel. You know, like, whether or not a jury is ever going to buy that is a different thing, but it's certainly like a defense. And, you know, as a defense attorney, there's nothing that's more difficult to sell to a jury than the insanity defense, because human beings, just by our nature, do not accept the fact that there ever exists a point in time in our lives where we don't have some kind of control over our mind, to where, like, we're being compelled to do something and we're not able to think about it, that it's not functioning, our mind's not functioning properly. And it exists in the world. But when you have child victims, juries don't care about that. Juries, somebody's paying for it, and they're not going to allow them to get away with it based on some kind of thing that's not tangible. Like it's always the thing with mental illness. It's, you know, if your kid falls and breaks their arm on the schoolyard and the school calls you, you're taking your kid to the hospital and you're getting the arm set and they're getting a cast put on. You know, we don't necessarily do the same things when it comes to mental issues with our kids or ourselves, frankly. You know, oftentimes those things go unchecked and we may not even realize that we have an issue. You know, I mean, anybody that has anybody in their family or has had firsthand experience with somebody who's suffering from mental illness of whatever the case may be knows it's very real. But still, trying to sell it to a jury is so damn hard, especially in homicide cases, and especially when there's children victims. You know, it's just like it's like the toughest sell in the world. And if I'm John Pryor, I'm having to do that. I'm going to check, because Lori wouldn't let her lawyers do it, because she's like, I'm not crazy. You're crazy. You're the ones who are all fucking stupid. You don't understand what's going on here, dude. Like, I'm going to be fine, because when end of days comes, you shitheads are all going to be dead, and I'm going to be sitting high on the roost. I'm like number 3 on the list, bro. That's where I'm at, you know. And like,
She was just barely sane enough to be able to push that button, though.
Right. Exactly.
Somebody called her just barely sane enough, because you have to be sane enough to be tried.
Exactly. So, you know, like, as far as like, otherwise, what are they going? They're going to try to nip away at reasonable doubt. That's like, and like Katie will tell you, like, that is my last resort. Like, I never want to win a trial having to rely on the state not being able to meet their burden. but sometimes that's all we have, I mean, sometimes that's all we have. We have to chip away and just hope that they can't reach that beyond a reasonable doubt. But that's not, for your client, especially in a homicide case, that is not a rousing, oh yeah, we think you're innocent. Cause like I've had more than one judge tell my client, look, you may have been found not guilty. That doesn't mean you're innocent, and there's a distinction there, and there is,
So Katie, if you're the prosecutor in this case, what are you doing to combat that? Like, what are you going to nail down to make sure these people know that Chad wasn't just some? Because like I could just figured like they could be like, well, Chad, I just wrote these books. I didn't know what was going to happen. Like what do you think is going to be? What are they going to really nail down in this case to like really put the screws that Chad was absolutely a part of this? It wasn't just Alex. It wasn't just Lori. Chad was a part of this.
Let me see if I can get this on the screen. There we go. You walk around with these in your pockets. These are computers, and they're ratting you out. Don't ever commit a crime with a cell phone.
True story.
And they've got latitude and longitude data.
They got it all.
His text messages are terrible. The tapped phone line is awful. I mean, it might be circumstantial. It might be a circumstantial case, but I think it is a fairly strong one. Charlie Adelson was also a circumstantial case, and you saw how quickly that jury came back.
Right.
So circumstantial cases can be very, very, very strong cases. It's very easy to cross-examine a human being, like somebody who says, I saw him shoot her. Because then, he's got a motive, he's got terrible eyesight, he wasn't even there, he was high on drugs, he's known mental illness problems. There's plenty of ways to cross-examine a person. But all of these circumstances to line up at the same time and coming out of his own mouth and out of his own fat little thumbs. I mean, how many of my clients have I said, but for your fat thumbs, we never meet?
Right.
Yeah, from sending text messages.
Yeah.
Where they're about, how close these people are to death ahead of time. I mean, how's that for premeditation?
I mean, do people still and we're attorneys. I mean, 80% of the cases that we tried were circumstantial. Circumstantial evidence is frankly more powerful than direct,
right,
short of a straight up video where you can clearly see who the perpetrator is. Because as you were just talking about, Katie, like eyewitnesses suck. If there's guns that are involved and there's active shooting, no one's trying to look at what the shooter looks like. They're trying to duck and save their lives. It's like every case that is powerful is typically built on powerful circumstantial evidence, and that's just like when I first started doing the Twitter and kind of was getting out of the law game a little more. And like, I was surprised how many people are like, oh, well, it's a circumstantial case. I'm like, circumstantial cases, man, they're very powerful. They most cases that we see are circumstantial. Murdoch, circumstantial. Adelson, circumstantial. They're all circumstantial. You rarely have those cases because you know why you rarely have them? Because they rarely go to trial. If you have straight up direct evidence, you have to have a client that's an absolute idiot. That's just saying, I'm going to trial. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to trial. You got that guy where I'm like, dude, you got somebody that like literally saw you and happened to take a picture of you on their phone. You're done. We're not going to there is no silver tonguing this thing to a not guilty on that. So
4K, HD TV, DNA on everything.
Dude,
it's
everything.
Biohazard of a case.
Yeah, and DNA is circumstantial, I mean, that there's a million ways that DNA can get spread. But however, if you end up with your DNA in a crime scene, it's a really, really bad look. And then if they could build up, you know what I'm saying? It's like
people, I just fell in her vagina.
yeah. I would almost consider that to be direct evidence.
I can't do that one with a straight face.
Yeah.
Well, what about the circumstantial evidence that just so happens that both these people's spouses die and then they get married, in Hawaii, 3 weeks later, or whatever. Just the circumstances are just how could any jury not think that both of these idiots were involved? I really,
Well,
While they're
they're
texting about how close they were to death beforehand.
Right.
and there, I mean, his approach has to be like, I doubt that he'll focus on throwing Lori under the bus. It's going to be Alex. Like he's going to say, because and I said that a ton in our pod. I'm like, Alex was the henchman, you know, like I have zero doubt he was the one out doing the dirty work. Like he was the one, he was the trigger man. He was the, like, I mean, we know from, you know, the sister-in-law when he's rolling down the window with his fucking BB gun trying to, I mean, it's like the guy he was clearly the dude who was doing all the killing. Now it's going to become an issue for Chad. Was he involved? Did he have knowledge? I mean, but if I'm Pryor, if I'm not doing the, you know, the mental defect thing that they have available to me out there, for whatever reason, either the you know, the reports came back from my experts saying this guy's fine. You know, he's not insane. You know, and I'm like, oh shit, well, there goes that thing. Yeah, don't write a report because I don't want to send that over to the state. You know, so it's like at that point you're throwing dude under the bus. You're saying, yeah, it was him. Like the guy was unhinged. You know, I mean, like he was unhinged. So, you know, I mean, that's who I fully anticipate. And he's not here to defend himself. So, and I think they killed him. Like, I know they say he died of natural causes. Like, I have a zero doubt that they figured out a way to kill him.
Well, what Lori said last night was he apparently went down to Mexico a week before and got a certain amount of drugs from Mexico. And the night before he dies, Chad and Lori call him and like, listen, they're going to start investigating Tammy's death. And that next day, he dies. And her theory is that he took that drugs and killed himself. Like he did it to himself like that because he didn't want to deal with it. That was her theory. I don't know if this has been
wasn't it on a toilet though?
What's that?
Wasn't there like a toilet involved?
I'm not sure.
No,
there could be.
Elvis. That was Elvis.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're thinking of the king. You're thinking of the king. I think it did. Like there was a bathroom, but you know, like my thing my thing with him is that, again, Lori's the puppet master in this thing. Like people are going to start to see this thing for what it is. And I'm telling you, I was way ahead of the curve on Lori, and the person that she had most wrapped around her little finger was her brother. Like no one was more wrapped around her finger. So if she, whatever she said, and it reminds me of that case where this poor kid who like they made a docuseries out of it, the girl who was encouraging this kid to kill himself, like the night that he shoots himself in his car. That one. Like I could completely see a world in which Lori's like, you got to do, like they're coming after us and you're the wink link. You need to do this, and selling it under the guise of, this is your passage. This is your ticket. You need to do this and this, and you're going to be exactly where you need to be. You're going to make the sacrifice you need to make, and you're going to be in good stead. Don't worry about it. And I think even if it was a situation where he did it by his own hand, it was at the behest of Lori. You know, but
I felt like in his mind, to me, in Alex's mind, the way they probably told him, he was like one of the horsemen, and he was doing what God, who Chad was God wanted him to do. And Lord, both 100%. Of them really considered, and he was going to be I am the vengeance. What is the speech from Samuel Jackson? And like, he is the vengeance. Like he felt that he was doing this for God, right? So like, it's just
100%, dude. Like, and that's what I'm saying. Like he was the henchman. He was one of the four, you know, the four horsemen of the apocalypse in his own mind,
right?
Which was fed to him by his sister.
Right.
You know, like she got him to that point where he believed it. Everyone that got into her sphere got sucked into her shit until, you know, but you have a few that broke out of it, like Melanie broke out of it. And for any of you who did not listen to Alice and I's coverage of the Lori Vallow case, I'm going to say it again. My podcast with Allison is off the hook. And if you're going to watch this trial with Jay and I highly recommend as a primer. And I told Jay, I'm like, Jay, I don't know what other bullshit you're listening to, but you should just be listening to your friend's shit, because we covered it, and we break it down like in a way, like we went through all the witnesses. A lot of the witnesses we're going to hear, and we heard their testimony, and it's Alice and I breaking it down into what it means. And it, like, dude, it like the whole, you guys are going to love this trial. I'm just telling you, like, Katie, you're going to love this trial. Did you like follow Lori or not really? Cause it was audio. Like, did you just kind of?
I didn't, but I did. I did cram for this little spiel, and the chat just brought it up that there was like a weird incest thing going on with her and Alex, and that Lori had said to one of her friends when she was 13 or something like that, oh, my brother keeps trying to have sex with me, and her older brother, and that there's like weird simulated sex acts that between the two of them, like their parents. There's all kinds of like.
She was a very sexual being. Like she was a very, very sexual being, Lori was. And like as adults, like they wouldn't see each other for a few days, and then she'd jump up and like wrap her legs around him as a greeting. I want you to imagine this. Your brother, do you have a brother? Oh, we lost Katie. She gone. Her camera must have died. She was.
I bet you it did. I bet you did. So she'll be back.
Yeah, she'll be back. So
I just shared your link, by the way, Bob. So folks, if you're not, and of course the podcast, that's Bob's main deal. Defense Diaries. That's I'm going to be listening. And by the way, again, folks, we have a little bit of time because, like I said, I thought this was going to be this week picking a jury, next week starting, but no, it's going to be this week just questionnaires, and then like 2 weeks of jury selection. So we have time, folks.
When's that start, Jay? When's it supposed to start? So it's not April 1?
No, dude, this week is not even selection. It's just going in there with the questionnaires. Then it's a week to 2 weeks. So it potentially, and I got bad news for you, Bob. It could potentially be buttoned right up with Karen Reed, because I know you want to cover that.
Fuck,
so
dude. We're gonna have to figure something out, because those are two bangers. Like, we're gonna have to figure out a way to, like, where we can cover both of them, like both of us. Like, we'll talk about it, man. Hey, dude, congratulations on 1 year, my brother. I'm so excited for you, both you guys. It was such a, like, people, if you don't know, like, both Jay and I left our occupations and took like the biggest risks that we could possibly take, both with the support of our amazing wives behind us, to give this thing a shot. And like, we found each other on Twitter, dude. You know, I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for you. I know that you feel the same way that I do, in terms of, it was like life-changing, in terms of like, instead of getting up and just being fucking miserable with what you're doing every day, you get up and you look forward to doing this, and we're building this amazing community, man. So hats off to you, my brother. A year in, many, many more to come, my friend. And I look forward to being with you the whole way, man. It's
dude, I appreciate it.
Amazing, dude.
We've talked about it before during Murdoch. It was kind of like fate, man. Our paths crossed. We messaged each other, and like, you're my brother from another mother, and I
no doubt, dude. No doubt.
I appreciate it. Katie's back.
Katie, sorry, I was getting all emotional with Jay. I took advantage of that downtime to get all sappy with my boy. He's crossing the 1 year.
Tomorrow will be 1 year.
Yeah. And he's super close to 15 subs, y'all. So if you're not subbed, fix your life. Sub
14,954 folks.
Let's go.
Maybe tomorrow we can get there.
We're getting there tonight. We'll get, like, dude, by the time you wake up in the morning, you'll be over 15. I'm predicting
that'll
easily.
Be a really cool thing.
Easily.
I forget what we were talking to Katie about before. What were you were asking her a question like?
It was something good too. God damn it. I'm so old.
Well, let me ask you this. I have a question.
Incest thing, I'm sure.
Yeah, we were talking about Alex and Lori's like incestual weird relationship, and how she's like just she's a sexual being, man. It's like that's her. Like, as I dug into that case, that became so evident that she just, like, everything about her, she oozes sexuality. Like, that she hooked Chad, like, the first time she walked up to his little book table, just like flipping her hair. And I mean, before she turned into a haggard old bag, like, because of prison's tough, I mean, she was a good looking gal, you know? So like she went up, Chad was
was
like,
like-
holy shit. Who's that? Oh, I think I married you 7 years. Oh, you 7
Yeah,
months
exactly.
ago,
That
you
all of a
fuck."
sudden,
Yeah.
they were past. Did you see, Bob? I got a clip of her. She was like, she tried for Mrs. Texas. She was like, she was in the
Dude, I'm telling you.
pageants and all that stuff.
She
So
was
here's a question I have for you guys, and I think probably we can all agree this. If they find him guilty, is there any way he doesn't get the death penalty?
No way.
Katie, you then Bob.
I gave my answer. real
Yeah,
quick.
I mean, I happen to agree with his lawyer. It's like, oh, come on, he's a man, he's going to get the death penalty. They very rarely give it to women, and it's usually somebody who is just absolutely off the charts, like Eileen Wuornos. One of
I
them.
think so. Like, you guys are aware that they brought back the firing squad.
But this case is
You know,
not. Lori talked about it. The good Lori talked about it last night. This case was right after they did that, so this case does not qualify for that.
Oh, it's not
Oh, wow.
grandfathered in. It's not
No.
grandfathered in.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah, it's going to have to be Koberger. Will be the first guy if he's convicted. I happen to think they got the right guy in that. I get a lot of pushback on that from the pro burger people, but I don't know.
That.
Yeah, you know, it's like the guy left a knife sheath with DNA on it, and I'm like, you know, it's like I get people saying, "Oh, it was planted. Oh, we don't know how it got there." Like, there's that circumstantial evidence that you're talking about, but when it's left at a crime scene where 4 kids were brutally murdered with a knife, it's not great. It's pretty brutal. Like I wouldn't want to have to deal with it as an attorney. Like, I'm not loving that evidence, trying to figure out how to handle that, you know. And it's like, people, like, to me, the IGG stuff with respect to the dad is a red herring, because they got his DNA after he was taken into custody. They got his profile. Like, that was just what got them the arrest warrant. And if they can't get the arrest quashed, it's irrelevant to the trial. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever, because the state is going to put on his profile. Okay. And it's a match, you know. We cannot. So I don't know. Like, that's a case that I think that the law enforcement did a pretty good job on. And, you know, I take some heat for that. And it's funny, because I'm very much on the opposite side on Richard Allen's case. I have questions. I have a lot of questions, you know, and it's like, so, because people are always like, "Oh, Bob thinks everybody's innocent." I'm like, well, no, I think everybody's innocent until proven guilty. I always wait till trial, but I certainly have thoughts. You know, I certainly can look at the state's evidence that I'm hearing pre-trial and say, it's a pretty strong case. Like, I wouldn't want to be the attorney on that one, trying to get over that hump, because it's strong. You know, it's like,
Well, what's interesting about this case, Bob, and you always talk about that, we don't know until you get to the trial. You really don't know what's cool. But and just like the Adelsons, and it's similar to the Adelsons, this case where we do know the evidence. We do know the evidence, right? So it's a lot different
this
going
case,
into this.
we know they have tried the case.
Right.
You know?
It's like they already did the dress rehearsal. Like, so it's got to be for the state a lot easier. I mean,
this is an easier case, Jay, because they really had the issue of her not being present. You know, so they had to show, for the conspiracy charges, they have to be able to establish knowledge, you know, which is what Katie was talking about, that fucking this thing. It's the death of every criminal. You know, if you're like any criminal that carries this with them is a fucking idiot. Like, you know, and it's like, if you're going to commit a crime, you have to build a habit of getting rid of your phone and never bringing it with you a year and a half ahead of time. Because if you all of a sudden, right before you commit the crime, decide to leave your phone at the house where you never leave it at home, that's circumstantial evidence that you left it home purposefully. So you've got to, like, really think ahead if you're going to go out there and start killing people, about how to deal with this thing, because
get a burner, but unlike Rex Heuermann, don't take a selfie, because then it's no longer a burner. Get a burner, which potentially I think Wendy could have possibly.
Hi, Mom.
That's
the burner thing, and they're still tough. Like you have to go out of state to like a shitty little gas station that has zero surveillance.
There you go.
You've got to use cash. You gotta buy a minute card that you're not putting, that's not going to be in any way associated with your normal accounts. It's got to be completely off the grid, and it's not as easy to do as people think. Like it's like the phone thing,
Or
even burners.
can I jump in here? Or you could just not kill anyone.
That's a good.
Yeah,
that's a good
that's
point.
That's what I always tell my
where
clients.
this is going, by the way. We're not trying to teach you how to do it.
Yes,
that is my. That is,
you to do
Katie, that is, believe it or not, that is always my advice to my clients. Hey, don't commit crimes. Then you won't have an issue. Always. It's the best advice I can give them. And then followed by never talk to the cops. Shut the fuck up. Those are my two. Don't commit the crime. And then if you do, shut the fuck up. So that's it. Those are my golden rules right there.
I should write "shut the fuck up" on the back of my cards.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
I was so pissed. They're like, Alice and I have been telling our clients, like in that vulgar nature for the entire time that we practice, shut the fuck up. You don't talk to the cops under any circumstances. They're not there to help you. They're there to build a case. They're trying to get evidence out of you. That's all they're trying to do. I know what they're saying to you. Hey man, we're just trying to help you out here. You want to get home tonight. We just need to know the truth. That's all bullshit. So like whenever these two older lawyers came out with these YouTubes with the shut the fuck
I know
up,
exactly who you're talking about.
I was so pissed off. I looked at Alice. I'm like, these motherfuckers
lawyers.
still are shit.
I saw them on TikTok. They got a huge
Yes.
account. I know exactly.
Yes, those guys. I'm like, those bastards.
I can't believe it has already been an hour. I can't thank you guys enough. Before I give you final thoughts, I do want to say, and it's pretty funny because we always say portal, right, Bob? And it's particularly funny to say portal, and not, I don't know, funny, but like there's a different portal that Chad and Lori were talking about. The portal we're talking about is when this stream ends, it's going to our brother Publicly Buzzed, who's doing a show tonight on Diddy, folks. So if you're not familiar, he's going to get you familiar with it. So just before, but I want to give you guys, so when this ends, it's going to go to Steve, who's going to be probably live so check that out. Make sure you follow Publicly Buzzed, subscribe if you don't already. But before we do that, let me get your guys any final thoughts about, I know, Bob, you kind of already said, this trial is going to be, wild, but any other thoughts you want to give on how this goes?
I just think, and it'll be, Katie, are you going to jump on with us some during that trial? You should. It'll be fun. Yeah, you should. I love, I just want to tell you, I loved being able to kind of talk back and forth with the former prosecutor because it's neat. It's like we don't really get to see behind the veil, as defense attorneys in terms of being able to kind of say, hey, what the fuck's really going on back there in that prosecutor's office? Like, what the fuck? Why do you guys never I come to you with some legitimate shit and you're all like, nah, we're good. I'm like, what the fuck's happening? I loved being able to ask you those types of questions, kind of like from a prosecutor and you're on both sides, you've done both. So it's like, you've got that great experience. So I love doing that. I when Jay and I get to streaming this, would be phenomenal if you join us. Cause it's like, it's cool to be able to delve into that. And I'll have different questions than Jay, just because out of pure interest from my 20 plus years of dealing with prosecutors and those sons of bitches, just getting frustrated. So I love being able to probe your mind and you're super forthright and forthcoming about kind of what it was like and from that side of it. And it's neat to me.
Well,
so
that's what I told you, Bob. I said Katie's awesome, just like us. She doesn't pull any punches. She lets you know how she's feeling. And by the way, thank you, Tracy, for sharing. If you're not following Katie on Twitter, make sure you are. And last time I got it confused because I said she watches I said you watch Housewives, but that's incorrect. You watch The Bachelor, and that's almost over, right? Is that done now, or?
No, I started boycotting when it got even too stupid for me.
Is that the sauce?
I need to start
thing? Because that was really bad.
Allison keeps sucking me into Love is Blind. I'm like,
yep, that's the one of my friends wants me on.
Yeah,
it's I'm married.
Oh, like, oh shit! I'm like, that's amazing. I'm like, do it. But I want to get. She has a baby sleeping. It sounds like she's already hitched. No, Love is Blind. So they had one of the dudes, one of the former bachelors, as one of the Love is Blind guys. So he was in the pods. So it was pretty interesting. He was a real shitbag. No, actually, I think he was okay. There were a couple of real shitbags in this last season. Dudes. It's always the dudes. The dudes are always just awful.
Mm-hmm.
There was.
What was it? There was a show where it was all women. It was all lesbian couples, and I didn't know who to be mad at. It was really, really disconcerting for me. I would defend him
That's
his
so
cookies
funny.
every night.
That's
Yeah,
so
it was
funny.
like, 'cause you can always yell at the dude.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, and it's usually spot on. You know, it's usually the guy that sucks. So,
Mhm.
so yeah,
Mia
like
says,
my final thought is, make sure you're watching this with Jay and I. It's going to be a banger of a trial, and hopefully we'll have Katie on whenever she can spare some time.
yeah, I mean, Mia
And,
says, hope we see lots of more Katie. Katie has an
Yep.
open invite anytime she wants to come with me and Bob, or anytime. But Katie, I want to get your kind of final thoughts. And by the way, before I do, Shiraz with a $50
Woo, $50
thank you, happy
hello.
anniversary. Thank you so much, Shiraz. So let me get you, Katie, just kind of your final thoughts. What are you? How do you think this is going to be? What were your, going through all the stuff? Anything we didn't go over that you want to go over? Or what are your thoughts about this case?
I'm the thing that strikes me, and I hate to go back to, like, I was a prosecutor for a long time. I was a prosecutor for 12 and a half years. And the number of bodies that surround these people, even not just even the ones they were on trial for, but the fact that Alex Cox killed Charles Vallow, the fact that Alex Cox dies in very weird circumstances, and you just have like all of this death surrounding these people, and surely this is not a coincidence. And it makes me wonder which ones they actually got away with to bring them here, and how many names we're not hearing, because surely this is not the beginning of a crime spree, it's the end.
Right.
So it makes me wonder the other things that they've done and gotten away with, because you usually don't pick you don't pick up your crime spree and start off at murder.
Man,
hell of a way to start,
start
right? Usually you start off in the minor treasons and misdemeanors, and you start working your way up,
graduate up to the bad shit. Yeah.
And Katie, if that's your closing, is that kind of what you're gonna hit on? Like, there just ain't no way, guys. Look at all this to the jury. Look at all this stuff that happened. There is no way this is not planned together. Is that like essentially your closing? I mean,
as a prosecutor, I mean, look at the closeness in proximity, in space and time, and the text messages are just terrible. Of them, so like trying to, and Lori's asking him, "Are you sure he's not closer to death than you told me he was?" With the numbers, and I forget, it was like, if you're closer to 0 or closer to 100, and he said, "Oh, he's at 3," and Lori's like, "Are you sure he's not closer to 0 than that?" And like, basically, isn't he closer to us killing him?
Right.
And
Exactly.
Really, really bad, and it's if you have a jury that can follow the crazy, it's going to be a very fast verdict, in my opinion.
And that's they will, and that's what I was saying. They spent so much time establishing the crazy, and like, we're going to hear from Melanie, we're going to hear from Zaluma. Wait till you hear Zaluma. Like, these people that they indoctrinated, that like were able to kind of finally break free of them, are fascinating witnesses, and it gives you such depth of like just how deep this went with all these people that were like in their orbit. It's going to be a trial unlike anything you've seen. I'm telling you that. It's just, it's great. I've seen a lot of shit, and like, that trial had Allison and I like, woo, this is insane. Because it was that kind of trial. It's one of those
and
things.
and by the way, folks, we've said this before. That was just audio. This is not. This is full deal live stream video. This is like any other trial we watch. This is not going to be different. So buckle up, buttercups. But it's not going to be for like a couple weeks. But guys, thank you so much.
Up.
Yeah,
right,
more time.
Love you.
Love you guys. Check out Publicly Buzz. Love you. Thank you so much, Bob.
Bye, Jay. Happy Year Day.
Hey, Ali. Thank you so much. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Happy anniversary